Welcome to another video of the Jeremiah Patterson Show YouTube channel, and thanks for joining me on this Sunday. I am holding in my hand a letter that President Trump wrote to Speaker Nancy Pelosi on December 17th, 2019. That was just a day before his historical impeachment, and you're probably wondering, why is a picture of the Salem witch trials behind me on my screen? Well, the letter starts off with, and this may be relevant, but hold on. I'll get to my point. Dear Madam Speaker, I write to express my strongest and most powerful protest against the partisan impeachment crusade being pursued by the Democrats in the House of Representatives. This impeachment represents an unprecedented and unconstitutional abuse of power by Democrat lawmakers and unequaled in nearly 2.5 centuries of American legislative history. The articles of impeachment introduced by the House Judiciary Committee are not recognizable under any standard of constitutional theory, interpretation, or jurisprudence. They include no crimes, no misdemeanors, and no offenses whatsoever. You have cheapened the importance of the very ugly word impeachment! Exclamation mark. As you get later into this, President Trump accuses her of viewing democracy as her enemy. And I found that part fascinating, but the part that completely flabbergasted me was the part where he said this, quote, more due process was afforded to those accused in the Salem witch trials. The Salem witch trials was a diabolical period in American history. It is also an unscrupulous period in American history. And for the Salem witch trials to be so bad and so damning to that point where it was almost like it was inexplicable for someone to understand it, for someone to comprehend the information. And that is why I wrote an essay on President Trump's outlandish Salem witch trials analogy. In this essay, I wrote, the Salem witch trials was a disturbing time in American history. It was an unscrupulous process of false accusations and pernicious deaths. The Salem witch trials were profoundly misogynistic, inequitable, and very much so intimidating time to be alive. This paper analyzes the current administration's outlandish analogy of the Salem witch trials. And then I begin my paper. On December 17th, 2019, President Trump wrote a letter, this is the letter, to Speaker Nancy Pelosi. This letter was written and delivered to Speaker Pelosi the day before the historical impeachment vote of the president. He was reluctant to accept the fact that his impeachment was inevitable. This letter to the Speaker was pugnacious. In this letter, President Trump attacked the Speaker and accused her of abusing her power. This letter viciously attacked the Speaker in an aggressive way. It showed the reluctance of the president's ability to develop a positive political relationship. This also showed how hostile the president is towards bipartisanship. Many of the president's points used to attack the Speaker were very false. For instance, President Trump said Speaker Pelosi, quote, viewed democracy as her enemy. Reading forward into the president's letter to Speaker Pelosi, President Trump made the astonishing analogy of the Salem witch trials and referred it to his impeachment process. The president said, quote, more due process was afforded to those in the Salem witch trials, end quote. As a student who studied the Salem witch trials and analyzed the information meticulously, I feel as if this statement was irrelevant. People in the Salem witch trials were treated extremely worse than the current president. The Salem witch trials is a very unsettling phenomenon in our nation's history. People were brutally tortured and falsely accused of witchcraft. The Salem witch trials was conducted in a misogynistic way, and innocent people were accused of being witches. The first woman accused of witchcraft was Tituba. She was a Native American woman. Tituba was accused of witchcraft because of the theorization that she told girls voodoo stories, but this was a false accusation. The president's use of this analogy was misinterpreted and taken out of context. In a HuffPost article I previously read, Mayor Kim Driscoll of Salem, Massachusetts, stated that the situation in the Salem trials was different. Sorry about that. She stated that people were brutally hanged or pressed to death. Based on the current administration, this is not the same analogy as President Trump stated. Mayor Driscoll stated that this was a dubious legal process that bears no relation to televised impeachment. Mayor Kim Driscoll also tweeted that the president's analogy is outlandish and preposterous. She even recommended that the president, quote, learn some history, end quote. In conclusion, the president's analogy that more due process was given to those in the Salem witch trials was completely inaccurate. The fact is that no one was brutally hanged or murdered in the current president's administration. Therefore, there are no actual truth to this outlandish analogy. And that is my essay on the Salem witch trials. President Trump's outlandish analogy to the Salem witch trials was diametrically inaccurate. And I go back to the point where Mayor Kim Driscoll says of Salem, Massachusetts, she says, quote, it was outlandish and preposterous. Basically, her tweeting and her statement on CNN and other national televised news networks, it did make sense that she was saying his analogy is outlandish and preposterous. I mean, I want to show you this video now. If we can get it up there. I want to show you this video now of basically what caused the Salem witch trials. And here's that video now.
January 1692, and there is trouble in Salem village. The minister's daughter and niece are exhibiting bizarre behavior. The village doctor says the girls are bewitched, but by whom? Reverend Paris orders prayer and fasting to counteract the witchcraft. But the girls' strange behavior continues, stopping and starting unpredictably for weeks. Over 3 centuries later, it is difficult for us to believe that the children's fits were induced by invisible witches. But if they weren't bewitched, what was going on?
Children in 17th century Western society were not so much objects of affection within a family as they were sources of labor and young sinners who needed to be disciplined into good behavior.
We go astray as soon.
Girls, or you could say women, they are often perceived as witches. Men and boys are often perceived as wizards. It is an interesting comparison. It is an interesting virtual comparison as I found this out once again. But yes, men are wizards and women are witches. Only one man was accused of being a witch. And that is why I state out that the Salem witch trials were very misogynistic, because they only accused women multiple times, and they thought this exact behavior exhibited by these 2 young girls, the first 2 young girls that accused Tituba of these witchcraft allegations. It was a very interesting time in American history. And so that is the Salem witch trials for you, wrapped up. Happy Sunday. Thanks for watching this video, and remember to stay positive and inspired.